Pete Hegseth has been under a lot of fire for the allegations of sexual assault, understandably so. And there's been more and more talk about some of the bizarre things he said about the possibility of a civil war in America in one of his books. But there's other positions he's taken that I think should also concern people if he comes into more political power. And in particular, it has to do with education, which you wouldn't think that either he as an individual or him as Secretary of Defense would have much to do with. But take a look at this.
We draw out in the last part of the book what an educational insurgency would look like, because I was a counterinsurgency instructor in Afghanistan, and kind of the phases that Mao wrote about.
Yeah.
And we're in middle phase 1 right now, which is effectively a tactical retreat where you regroup, consolidate, and reorganize.
Yep.
And as you do so, you build your army underground with the opportunity later on of taking offensive operations in an overt way. Mm-hmm. And obviously, all of this is metaphorical and all that good stuff.
You get it? He threw on at the end, a disclaimer, just in case. I'm just using a metaphor or whatever, because I'm a deep thinker who uses metaphors and stuff like that. Obviously, you can read that on his face. The bizarre thing about him as he goes on his rant, and it goes on and on and on in that interview. We're not going to subject you to more of him. I can read some quotes, but where he talks about how they're going to sort of take over education, and every bit of it has military terminology. I said this in our production meeting this morning. He was in the military, and he talks about that a lot. It doesn't make him qualified to be Secretary of Defense, but it is true that he was in the military. And yet, when he uses that terminology, he sounds like a guy who wasn't in the military, but is pretending to have been.
Totally.
It's like he's putting on a costume that he used to have as a uniform, but it seems deeply inauthentic when he uses the terminology. But anyway, that's the least important part of this. When he talks about an insurgency and building your army and tactical retreats and all that, and the goal is, as everything else is with Pete Hegseth, to the extent that he has the intellectual capacity to understand Christian nationalism and setting up a Christian fascist state, that's what he's been advocating for in books, on podcasts, all of that. You get a little bit of like, don't wash your hands or whatever, but a lot of Christian fascism. And so I'm a little bit worried about that as well. But what do you make of it?
Yeah, no, a little bit. We should be deeply worried about Pete Hegseth being at the head of our military, especially as that military, it's been hinted at, would be used against the American people themselves in whatever context, right? Whether it's sending the military to a school that would like to allow trans people to use the bathroom of their gender, to shore up the Proud Boys and Moms for Liberty, whether it's sending the military to campuses and to crack down on pro-Palestine protesters, right? Whether it's sending the military in any situation you could possibly, to quell, let's say a strike. What if there is a broad strike? Let's go send in the military there. Send in the military whenever, like, there are many situations that they can imagine to send in the military to make sure that this kind of Christian nationalism is enforced by you shutting up, staying in your lane, keeping quiet, and not getting, uppity, so to speak. It's terrifying, John. Like, we are gonna see some of the most egregious political repression I think we will ever see in our lifetimes in the next 4 years. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to protect ourselves and our families and our communities? And how are we going to sort of build simultaneously political movements and that can actually reclaim what the Democrats and Republicans have truly destroyed? Because Trump voters will very quickly realize that this guy's not delivering for them. They will be very, very sorely sorry about this new regime. So I don't know.
I hope you're right about that.
It gets, I think the last thing I'm gonna say is, I think one thing we have to be prepared for also is vigilantism. And I don't mean, sorry, maybe that's not the right word. Like Department of Defense anointed militias. So you can imagine some kind of like 3%ers militia or Proud Boys or something being basically deputized by the DOD to say, you're gonna effectively be our more militant wing of the US military, because our guys and women, can't really get in line the way you guys can. They're not as ideologically driven. So you guys, we're gonna outsource some of the dirtiest work to you all. That That is something that every fascist regime has had. And I do think we're going to be seeing that under Trump 2.0.
Well, hold up, Francesca. Stand back and stand by. We'll see. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?